Of course you look Latvian. Of course I look Latvian.
You're also Latvian? You're half Latvian?
I'm half Latvian.
That's amazing.
My mother's Latvian.
That's crazy.
Do you know the language?
I'm not anymore. Do you?
No. My mother was so traumatized coming over here as a she was a war orphan in the Second World War. You know, the Russian soldiers came into her farm and at gunpoint, chased them out. And so she was just so traumatized, and she was only 10, and she spent 5 years at German displaced persons camp, and she was just so traumatized. I went through her all her stuff when she died 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And like in the midst of all this shit, she was became a very bad hoarder. In the midst of like newspapers and like just like shit, I find this notebook. And I'm like doing the math, and I'm like, oh my God, this is when she was in the German displaced persons camp in Latvian.
Wow.
Someone said, look, this is unusual. Go to contact the University of Latvia, because I think they're going to be interested in this. They were immediately interested. They transcribed it immediately from written Latvian into, typed Latvian. And then for all these years, I just didn't
Sorry, I didn't realize Katniss was out. I just didn't want to make sure she doesn't get to you.
So I didn't know that you could just translate something really easy with like AI.
Yeah.
And so then I got a free subscription to something like for a month, and I transcribed it, and I just this week for the first time read it, and it's fucking sad.
Oh, of like the conditions that she was going through and like letters that she'd be writing?
Well, it's like her diary for like a year and a half.
Wow. Yeah. So is it like in a museum now?
Well, they have, yes. In fact, my sister answered all the questions. Like they said, we want to have this, like some information around this document. It's a rare document to have a first, first person account. And so my sister just answered all the questions, like, tell me about the rest of her life. And my sister wrote all that. And so I don't think it's on display anywhere because it hasn't been translated until I did it with AI this week. This week.
Wow.
I've been thinking a lot about Latvia.
That's crazy. Yeah.
And the fact that we both look Latvian.
That is kind of funny that we're both half Latvian. Like, I don't know what my other half is, or I don't know my parents actually. I was adopted. So I was adopted by American, and then they've lived in California and then moved to Maryland. And so I've kind of more integrated.
But your genetics are
Latvian.
Latvian.
Genetics are Latvian.
Like 100%?
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I know I was born there. I was born in Riga.
I went there twice, obviously, like as a tourist.
Yeah.
That's
cool.
With my mother.
We're going to do a quick intro. Yeah, so this is the producer pod.
Latvia meets Latvia.
2 Latvian ambassadors.
Of course. Of course. Okay.
My name is Rivis, and so what is your name?
Amanda.
Amanda. Yeah, Amanda is a nutritionist, very knowledgeable. We had a very engaging conversation the first time we met about a condition that your son-in-law was going through, and now you've gone on this whole journey to try to, I guess I'll let you explain it.
Right. So we can never anticipate what kind of a partner our children will partner with. And we anticipate all the possibilities that would be unusual, and I'm ready for anything. I wasn't quite ready for a serious progressive genetic disorder that causes, progressive muscle atrophy.
What is it called?
FSHD. It's a type of muscular dystrophy. When I first heard muscular dystrophy, I was alarmed because I only knew of the one that was really serious called Duchenne's, which is, people pass away in their mid-20s. And so I was alarmed. But there's 9 of them, I learned. There's 9 muscular dystrophies. I immediately started learning because this was happening in my life. Because anything that happens in my 3 daughters' lives are happening in my life as well. And so this one is FSHD, fascio, FS, sacral scapular and humeral. So it has to do with the face, the whole chest area, and the upper arms. But it could affect any muscle throughout the entire body.
Okay.
And his was actually more of his legs. Anyway,
And it deteriorates the control of them. Is it the nerves or is it muscular?
the muscles atrophy dramatically. And you can see sort of the muscular decline that he's experiencing already. So anyway, there's a normal life expectancy, and there's an expected muscle decline, and there's a 20% chance of being in a wheelchair. So, first of all, I love him. I adore him. He's the nicest guy. I understand why my daughter just completely fell in love with him. Overwhelmingly in love with him. The relationship is so sweet, and when they're together, they're encouraging, they're supporting, they're lifting up.
Right.
And of course, I couldn't be anything besides what I am, which is a nutritionist.
Yeah.
So I immediately started the nutrition part of it because Samantha has the loving him part of it.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, we all love him as a family as well, and we all invited, sort of very much welcomed him in when he proposed to her, which is only a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
And but I've been reading about and researching FSHD now for about a year. And at first it was really slow going because I was just using the techniques that I've always used. And then about 4 months ago, I was introduced to AI, and AI just allows you to research fast, like the deep research. It allows you to access things that have been, research that came out
discovered.
like a month ago.
Yeah.
Like there was like nothing until until like this past December. And then I think there was like January or February, there was another research study connecting nutrition in an authentic way to FSHD. Before, the few studies that were there were so poorly done that there was really no value to be gotten from them. They were so poorly done and poorly analyzed. So I'm still in this mostly vacuum of, there is an expectation like what mom has always done. Mom has always had a solution, and then the solution has always been nutritional.
So you believe that you can actually somewhat reverse the effects or stunt the effects of it spreading through his body with nutrition?
You absolutely can. It doesn't reverse it because the genes are inherent to your body. That will always be him. That will always be a part of him. But all of our gene expressions, there's, the epigenetics is the environment affecting your gene expression. Gene expression is where it's at. So the environment means like the actual environment, like, we're in this apartment right now, or it also means the food. It means what you drink. It means what you eat, the supplements, the how well you sleep, stressors and things like that. It's like everything that's an input can affect your genes. And so the goal is to calm the gene which is like going abnormal in him, and that's called the DUX4. And so I'll say DUX4.
Okay.
So I'm not talking about the bird ducks. I'm talking about the gene DUX4, and so you and I have that gene, except the last time it was active in you and me, I think it was something like, I think we were about 8 cells big.
Oh, wow. Like we were in a fetus.
We were just starting out being a fetus.
Yeah.
We were newly fetuses.
Okay.
And then it stops. It has a very important role back then when you're soon after conception. And then it's supposed to be dormant, period, for the rest of your life. But with FSHD, it's active. And so there are ways to calm it. So that's what I've been studying.
Okay.
So there isn't a lot that says like direct, these are the nutritional practices for FSHD, but what there are these are the nutritional practices for this biochemical pathway, which is connected, or this body processes, which is connected, or so that's what I've been studying, and there is a lot of material there.
Okay. So I guess to kind of just give people some bite-sized nuggets of things that you've really learned, because I know you could probably get into it really expansively. But so what would be the main foods right now? Do you think he should be, or someone with this disease, be focusing on, eating or consuming or even injecting? I guess
Yeah.
certain
Well, a lot of it has to do with supplements because if you take a look at the foods that are relevant to each of these biochemical pathways, the foods look a lot like the Mediterranean diet. It looks like the Whole30. It looks like the basic just eating whole foods. That's what most of it looks like. Now, there's variations in this biochemical pathway. You would eat, these primarily these 6 foods, and that other one, it might be these, other 6 foods, and there might be a lot of overlap as well.
Which 6 foods?
No, I mean, there's obviously like turmeric and ginger is in a lot of them.
Okay.
That is a spice, but it's a food as well. So there's a lot of overlap, but it's basically whole foods. But the thing that gets kind of intense are the supplements. The supplements, the individual nutrients that affect each of the pathways. For example, the key thing, first of all, that took me a long time was the overall organization. The overall organization is that there are things that affect pre versus post. Pre meaning that if you have these intact, you will tend to keep the DUX4 gene calm, quiet, not active. And that's what you want. Because if it's not active, it doesn't actually produce problems. And so there's 3 ways to keep it non-active. One is to be pretty much in a parasympathetic mode all the time. Actually, that's not from a nutritionist. That's like he's going to have to really learn how to meditate, to calm, to come in that peaceful place. That parasympathetic is the opposite of fight or flight. It's rest and digest.
Okay.
And so when he does his athletics, because he's doing a lot, he needs to actually come into it, get those points of intensity, and then come out of it into a point of rest and digest. So cause it takes him more to recover.
With like Epsom salts, what like kind of recovery are you talking about?
Oh, I'm talking about meditation.
Okay.
I mean, actually, like that kind of like breathing, the kind of like, deep inhale and slow exhale. The longer the exhale, the more calming it tends to be. So those kind of practices he needs to learn.
How long, like between, what were the sessions looking like? 20 minutes, an hour, a day, or?
There's so many different ways to, and so that's not something that is pigeonholed that I've seen, nor something that I would want to pigeonhole, because everyone feels a little more comfortable doing a different things. Like someone might do 2 minutes many times a day. Someone might do 20 minutes twice a day, which is typical of TM.
Yeah.
Someone might do that long 1 hour meditation, but I think meditation has to be part of it. But then like periodic breathing exercises. Sometimes I feel like, I feel myself feel myself sort of tense, and then like you get that in, and the longer the exhale, the calmer it is of a breath. So you want to emphasize that long exhale. And so those are the techniques they need to learn.
Okay.
And so there's 3 things that help calm the DUX4 gene. Another one is methylation groups. Getting methylation. So there's a lot of talk right now about that, because there's ridiculously one genetic marker that people are getting tested, and that's the FSH, the one for folic acid, the one for B9, MTHFR, MTHFR. There's so many different letters here, MTHFR. Yeah. So people are getting that one tested, and then they say, oh, I need all these methylation supplements. But that's often not the case. But in his case, that is true. He needs these methylation supplements. So there's something called SAM, SAM with a small e. Which is often used for like depression or liver detox, but in his case, it's something that delivers the needed methyl groups to calm his DUX4.
Is it pill?
It's a pill.
In food, or
there's not enough in food. It's going to be pills. And there's something called TMG. TMG, interestingly, is one of those multi-use thing because it's good for methylation groups, but it's also good for his muscular development. Bodybuilders will use TMG. That's a common one for bodybuilders to use.
What, is it like a growth hormone?
No. It's a type of glycine. Glycine is a TMG. It's trimethylglycine, and glycine is an amino acid. And in that configuration, it tends to help with muscle repair, which is what he needs.
Okay.
And then there's B6, B9, B12. There's some of the B vitamins have the methylation. A methylation group is just a carbon and 3 hydrogens that it's like extra, and it can be attached and given and provided
as
needed
to other forms
that and then it makes them more methylated, and when they're more methylated, it calms the DUX4.
Oh,
This
okay.
is what we want.
Okay, and that's what we want to slow it down.
So we want the DUX4 calm. And then there's supporting nutrients for all those methylation groups, and that's like magnesium and a few other things.
Yeah, I wanted to actually talk to you about magnesium because that's like a huge one that I've been kind of hearing, especially in the personal training side of things, helping with recovery.
Yeah.
So, what is the best way to absorb magnesium?
Okay, magnesium. I love the subject of magnesium because, first of all, there's so many types, and so there's so many uses for it. So first of all, there's a spectrum between being very, very absorbable and very, very not absorbable. So you would think the ones that were not absorbable shouldn't even be in the market, but actually they have a use too. They all have a use. And so on the very, very high absorbability spectrum is magnesium glycinate. Magnesium glycinate would be what you need to take for your magnesium status in your body. It's a little bit misleading because there's also something called magnesium orotate, which is more absorbable into the cells as opposed to magnesium glycinate is more absorbable into the bloodstream from the intestines. But so there's a category of like really absorbable. But then there's some that are extremely not absorbable, like magnesium oxide. But I have that. Why would I, as a smart nutritionist, have magnesium oxide when I just said it doesn't absorb very well?
Yeah, why?
Yeah, because it's a laxative, and sometimes I need a laxative. The reason why it's a laxative is because it doesn't absorb in your small intestine, and it goes on to your large intestine, and in your large intestine, it's in quantity because it wasn't absorbed, and it draws water in.
Okay.
And so I don't keep that in my kitchen. I keep them in my medicine chest. I use it as a medicine when I'm constipated.
Okay.
And it's very useful for that.
Yeah,
it's very
like
effective.
magnesium milk.
Yep, milk of magnesia.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yep. That has those osmotic forms of magnesium that don't get absorbed well, and they draw water in osmotically in the large intestine, and they work great.
Okay,
They work
and
great.
so what's like on the side of being able to absorb
Glycinate,
more?
magnesium glycinate. But then there's like magnesium malate, which is almost as absorbable, and that's good for detoxifying. And then there's magnesium taurate, which has some connected with taurine. That's magnesium and a little bit of something for relaxation. More absorb.
Maybe it would help also saying the certain food that is associated to that specific thing, or is it just are they just a supplement?
Those are how supplements are made and marketed. They are attached to. You can't take a mineral just without it being attached to something with a carbon. We're a carbon-based life form, and like if you took a spoonful of dirt that has tons of minerals, you wouldn't absorb those minerals because they're not attached to a carbon. So all of these things, the magnesium malate, magnesium glycinate, magnesium taurate, they all have a carbon element that tells the body this should be absorbed, this should be used, and this can be used. And so there are so many forms that each one has its own special use. And there's one that I really love that I took today, actually before this.
Okay.
Why? What kind of a magnesium would I need before this?
Something that makes you more relaxed. Oh, more focused.
So there's something called magnesium L-threonate. All the other ones don't cross the blood-brain barrier very well, and so they just replete any deficiency you might have in your body. But magnesium L-threonate crosses the blood-brain barrier really well, and so if you are deficient in magnesium, because most people are after about age 40,
Okay.
it's not enough to take magnesium glycinate because your brain will lag behind. It's magnesium glycinate, the most absorbable magnesium, plus magnesium L-threonate. Both of them. You really need both.
So you just took 2 pills, like it's a pill form,
Yeah.
or was it? It's not with alcohol. Just kidding.
Well, there are a lot of nice herbs that are preserved in alcohol. That
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah. Oh, I mean, maybe actually, probably majority of the population would get a lot of value off of the alcohol side of the conversation. I don't drink at all, so I don't really care that much about it, but I'm sure people do. I mean, I kind of still want to be on the magnesium train. I know that the like for instance, the sweet potatoes side of things for bodybuilders or people that are trying to eat, they're like a complex carb too, right?
yeah,
And
they're great.
You put that in your body, you're absorbing the magnesium. And what else? Like the potassium? These are...
Magnesium, potassium. There are so many good things, and there's obviously the carotenoids. There's a reason why they're the color that they are. But there is also one thing I want to talk about relative to sweet potatoes,
Okay.
which is, what is the bad thing in sweet potatoes?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Well, there is one thing.
Is it the skin?
No, there's something called oxalates. Are you familiar with that?
It's somewhat. I've heard it.
So in it often is talked about in the category of like gluten and oxalates and lectins and some of the plant protective elements that can be a little toxic. This one I do feel is going to be understood at one point as being much more significant than gluten and all the others. I think that this is the most underrated problematic element in food, and it's pretty high in sweet potatoes. Now, I have the advantage in the sweet potato world of I've always preferred mashed sweet potatoes. And why is that an advantage? It's an advantage because if you want to make sure you don't get a big oxalate load every time you eat sweet potatoes, which is a problem, you want to connect it, you want to combine it with something called calcium citrate, because oxalates bind with calcium citrate, very specifically that form of calcium. And when it does, it can't be absorbed by the intestines. It can't be absorbed by the body. It will just stay in the intestines and be eliminated in your stool. And so whenever I have sweet potatoes, I mash it like I've always done, which I love and prefer, and I just put a bunch of calcium citrate in it.
What is that? Is it
it's a form of calcium that just binds with the oxalates.
What is it? What type of food is it? Is it like?
It's a white powder that tastes like nothing.
Oh, okay.
It has no granularity. It tastes like nothing. It doesn't make anything bitter or grainy. It just grabs onto the oxalates.
So it's part of your recipe. You just put like a scoop of protein, it's a scoop of oxalates.
Yep. So a scoop of calcium to bind the oxalates.
Okay, calcium.
The oxalates come straight from the sweet potato.
Oh, okay.
But other than that, sweet potatoes are amazing. And I do eat them, with some regularity, but I also do make sure I prep them so that I don't get susceptible to some of as we get older, oxalates tend to not dissipate out or detox out very readily. So they tend to accumulate as you get older. And people say, I got I got problems with my joints, problems with this. And I do too, actually, because I didn't know about this until fairly recently. And a lot of those things I do believe are oxalate loads that are just accumulating over the years.
Is that just like stopping certain range of motion because it's just a clump? Like, what is it like?
No, so if you look at it under a microscope, they look like shards of broken glass. And so once they enter so in the past, in our evolutionary past, we had better junctures, tight junctures in our intestines. And so those things tended to not come into our bloodstream. But now that our intestines are compromised with glyphosate and just, processed foods and just, a stressful life, it's coming into our bloodstreams and it's just playing havoc. It can go in any organ. We think about oxalates as in our kidneys as kidney stones. That's the main way that people know oxalates.
My sister gets a lot of those. She's just 30 and she's in the 32.
She needs to drop her oxalates. And
it's probably from the soda though. Is it maybe because that's what I thought was leading to it because of high consumption of the soda?
I would suggest cutting down oxalates, and I would suggest adding vitamin K2. But we can talk about that later. I can give your sister a protocol after this.
Yeah, sure. But I cut you off. You were saying... kidney stones.
So we think of them as kidney stones, and that is actually the organ that it does migrate to the most readily. But it can actually migrate to any place: muscles, tissues, organs, brain. I mean, literally any organ. Sometimes there are disease processes that are mistakenly called something else. Like when they get in the muscles, you get these like tremendous pain in your muscles, and people call it, oh, that's fibromyalgia. But it's a little bit different from fibromyalgia. But that's what the doctors will say. But often it's just an accumulation of oxalates. The same way with certain joint diseases and disorders, and the same way with some organ disorders. Tend to they could be an oxalate load. So the easy way, first of all, you can't go to zero oxalates, because then you would be on the carnivore diet, because all plant foods have some. I mean, sometimes very little, but some. But the key start is just to get rid of spinach and almonds. If you get rid of spinach and almonds, those are the two that are profoundly higher than anything else. And as there's more research in oxalates, one of the things that you hear people saying, the people who research it the most, are saying things like they never should have been cultivated for human consumption. They're just too high in oxalates for the body to accommodate. And so sometimes I hear people talk about, they put first of all, raw spinach is far worse than cooked. They put tons of raw spinach into their smoothies. They have spinach in their salads. They have spinach, all day long. And they have almonds in every form too, between almonds and almond milk and almond butter and almond in their gluten-free, breads and things like that, because that's a common substitute for wheat flour is almond flour. And it's a problem. So,
you think they do that on purpose? Do you think that they're just creating an issue?
No. I think that almonds taste really yummy.
Yeah.
And I think that they work really well in baked goods. I mean, they're trying to get the texture that people want. They're trying to get the taste and the lusciousness that people want. And almonds provide lusciousness. They're tasty.
They don't realize that it's really doing more harm than good.
Well, it's going to do harm for some people more than others. And also, food manufacturers aren't really thinking about the health of people. They're looking. Their number one is going to be their bottom line, their profit line. So we have to take care to eat the right thing.
I heard that even almond milk can create osteoporosis. I mean, like it can start degrading the quality of your bones.
Oh yeah. Well, oxalates grab onto calcium. So when they grab onto calcium in your stomach and in your small intestine, that's good, because once it grabs onto calcium, it can't be absorbed. But once it's absorbed into your body, those oxalates will grab onto the calcium in your body. And strip it out of your bones, strip it out of your cells, strip it out of your bloodstream. It's a problem. So one of the biggest causes, some people believe, I mean, these things are not definitive. There's a lot of differences of opinion about something this big as osteoporosis. But some people do believe that could be the biggest cause, could be actually oxalates. Think about people who eat those things all day long, high oxalate foods. And, so that has a cumulative effect. Things like spinach, people think about spinach as having calcium, but actually has a negative calcium score, because there is not enough calcium in the spinach itself to bind completely with the oxalates. So there'll be extra oxalates in the bloodstream that will be scavenging and grabbing calcium from other sources in the body.
So what would you say could replace your need for spinach and almonds and all of those fake milks?
Okay, so spinach is, arugula is really close to zero. Arugula is like, instead of like hundreds or thousands that spinach can be with normal servings, arugula is like 1 or 2, units of oxalates in normal servings. So arugula is good for raw salads. Arugula is good for cooked greens. And so that is what I've adopted a lot of. Arugula is a pretty strong green, though, so some people don't like it. But the romaine, which is sometimes people think it's like too bland.
Tastes like water.
It's like water, yeah. So some people who like it really intense will just have arugula salads. Who like it bland will just have the romaine. But the combination is a really good one because you have a little bit of both. You have more of a balance.
Okay.
So
you would say arugula for salads. You also kind of hinted some in that previous conversation about adding parsley to certain things.
Parsley, interestingly, parsley lowers body oxalate loads. Clearly, it's been researched, but it has about a medium level of oxalates itself. So it's kind of, it works with its own, plant nutrients. It's got something called apigenin in it. It's got, some other like robust plant nutrients in it. So like for a smoothie, instead of having spinach, I put in parsley. I happen to put parsley in almost anything. I joke that it's my spirit vegetable. We have spirit animals. I have a spirit vegetable, and it's parsley. And I do use it robustly. I haven't managed to find a dessert recipe that makes it that work, but I have put it in smoothies.
Well, parsley pie.
Wait a second, that exists?
Parsley pie? If it doesn't, it should.
Oh, you're pulling my leg. I will make it exist.
It's for your birthday. I made you some parsley pie.
Okay.
It's arugula, parsley, and sweet potatoes.
With enough calcium citrate to bind the oxalates in the sweet potatoes. Yeah, and so the substitutes for the almonds would be... first of all, nuts tend to be high, but the best of the nuts are walnuts, and the best of the seeds are probably pumpkin seeds. So walnuts and pumpkin seeds are not people's general favorites, but they certainly do provide that kind of like hearty, sort of dry heaviness, and that people I want and need sometimes.
And don't walnuts have like a lot of fat?
Omega-3s, right? The good kind, yeah.
My parents love walnuts.
Good.
That's the main thing that they... Cashews and walnuts. Are cashews bad?
Cashews are like the second worst one.
Oh, no.
If I were to say that the two highest nuts, it's almonds and then cashews. Cashews are kind of a distant second, but they are second. And nuts in general as a category are pretty high.
Oh, okay.
So I have had problems with aches and pains here and there. That was really, I know that I'm getting older, but it really was, I thought, disproportionate too, and to my age. And and then I looked at some of the other symptoms, and I thought, oh my goodness, I have a number of them. I'm not going to say
aching joints.
Yeah, but there are a couple other symptoms I'm not going to actually say because they're kind of like weird medical things.
Okay.
But I was definitely having some of the symptoms that are characteristic of, and then when I dropped it down, I had a lot of relief. I mean, there were times that I would like be completely confused as to why I was walking up the steps fine, and then I just couldn't walk up the steps without enormous pain. And then when I started to look at oxalates, I realized that those times were coming after my, I do like nuts, after my, multiple handfuls of almonds or my multiple handfuls of cashews. And they were coming like the next day with predictability. And then I realized, oh my God, I just tested over and over again, like on and off accidentally.
Yeah.
And it was an exact match. And so then I started looking more broadly for other things with oxalates that could be causing knee problems, because I want to be able to move.
Yeah. So you were saying that the carnivore diet does not have any oxalates.
Well, it's in plants. The carnivore diet's like meat.
Yeah.
And, animal products.
So there's also a lot of talk about you should just go vegan. You should just do carnivore. It's better for your heart. It's not as good for your heart. Red meat is bad. Actually, it's great for you. So, it's what?
Red meat's great. I had beef liver for breakfast today.
Of course.
Of course I did.
That and parsley.
Oh yeah, there was some later on in the turkey and parsley salad I had. Actually.
Okay.
Wasn't that funny? Yeah.
But so that's kind of like I want to touch on that that debate of like, okay, is a carnivore diet? I'm not trying to say better, but because it's depending on your personal needs, because like what your body needs. But what would you say is the kind of more favorable diet for like a normal person?
Recently, and I mean within the last 2 years, I have connected with the book Eating Right for Your Blood Type. So I literally read it in the 1990s when it first came out, and I thought, well, that's ridiculous. The premise is that each of the 4 blood types are associated with a different way of eating and aligning with certain foods and not others. And now, so I've been looking at it again with a little bit more seriousness, and there does seem to be we I think that what's true for us individually, we tend to extend out to, like, this must
Yeah,
be true.
you should try it too.
So I'm a blood type B, and it's just true that I look through the things that are good and bad that are supposed to make me feel good and bad, that are good and bad for me according to my blood type, and they're just true. They're just true. I look down this list, I go, oh yeah,
Like,
and then like something like, just a moment ago, I said that there was like a turkey and parsley salad that was involved with one of the things I ate today. Bees don't do well with chicken.
bees?
Blood type B.
Oh, okay.
Which which is what I am. And there are a number of other things like that when I just did a simple switch from chicken to turkey, I felt better. So the other thing that some of my nutritionist friends joke about, and they're like, "Oh, what are you doing now, Amanda?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "This is happening." I sort of joke about this. I go, "Oh, I'm so embarrassed. I'm so embarrassed." But right now, I am doing a balanced diet.
Oh, wow.
I'm a balanced diet.
Yeah.
Like I have, instead of doing these like wild exotic things now, but a blood type B does well according to that system of thought, does well on a balanced diet.
Okay.
So that makes me think that, that there's some validity to that. But it might be that everyone does well on a balanced diet. I don't know, but I certainly do. Now I've tried a lot of these things. I lasted on the carnivore diet for 6 days, and then I
wow.
was like, no.
What was the ejection? Like what made you stop?
I felt bad.
Okay. Well,
I felt
groggy. It was hard for you to focus.
And I felt heavy, and I felt well. Everyone feels a little bit constipated at first until your microbiome changes. But then, one thought is that people who are blood type O, do the best on the carnivore diet, and some of them you have to be whatever. Actually, I don't think there's a big difference in positive and negative. We have so many genes that, it's not just a pathological gene or we're all like the same. We all have this wild variation in genes. So I don't know what the configuration is or if we'll ever know, but it does seem like some people do well on the carnivore diet. There have been people like the woman Kelly, who like my no carb life is the name of her podcast.
Okay.
And she's been on it for, I think, decades at this point. And she's doing great. She was doing terribly before. She's doing great now. And there are a number of people like that who just seem to be able to go on it long term.
Isn't Peterson?
Jordan Peterson.
Jordan Peterson.
And his daughter, who I think she was the one who coined the term Lion's diet. Because at one point she was just on beef, water, and salt. And that was it.
Yum.
Yum until it gets tiresome.
Yeah.
And that's all she ate. And she had terrible symptoms. She had like multiple surgeries when she was like a teenager. And then she lost all these problematic symptoms when she was on this diet. And Jordan Peterson was close to death at one point himself. And he went on that diet. I don't think he's as strict as she is. And I think
because it's led from the diet. The diet is what's caused those symptoms, or is it there's other?
Oh no. He was eating like a normal balanced diet, and he got these terrible sicknesses, and the carnivore diet brought him back from the brink of death.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And the same way his daughter had all these crazy, with a normal balanced diet that we think of in our modern time, had all these crazy like arthritis, as a very young person, and I think she had some joint replacements as a very, very young person. And then when she went to a carnivore diet, and very specifically, the one that she named was the Lion's diet, all these things disappeared. All these symptoms disappeared.
So what's the benefit?
She got healthy.
Yeah.
I think some people tend to do well on it. And the first thing people say when they go, well, what about the vitamin C? That's the first thing people say. But because of the nature of how your microbiome changes, you actually get to you come to need much less vitamin C on that diet, and there is a little bit of vitamin C provided, especially if you eat liver.
Okay, what you do every day?
Well, I don't every day, but I eat liver probably once every 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's
Okay. So Okay, so what are the drawbacks of a carnivore diet? Like, why would you shy away from just a carnivore
Well,
diet?
some people really don't do well, and I do wonder if it's a blood type thing. Like,
Mm.
some people need the fiber. So, when people who do well in the blood on the carnivore diet do well long term, their bowel movements are normal, good, better than ever.
Mm.
But some people never make that transition in their microbiome, and they just like they go back to some normal fiber like fruits and vegetables, and they just feel better.
Mm.
Um,
Your body absorbs beef and those animal proteins better than vegetable or like a vegan protein. It's like one of the better ways to absorb
Yeah,
protein.
they're complete and they're easy to
Mm.
absorb. The high quality protein is not just a commercial thing. There's actually a scientific definition behind that, and it has to do with absorbability and the and how complete the proteins are. And they beat vegan proteins both for the having all the necessary essential amino acids and for absorbability.
Hmm. And they add the extra types of amino acids to make it a complete profile
Yeah.
in the vegan stuff now.
Yeah.
That does it. Is it pretty much comparable at this point?
Well, the vegan protein powders, if that's what you're talking about, the
Yeah.
protein powders are so much better than they were like even a decade ago. Because before you would have the problems with gas and bloating, you would have the problems with it not being a complete protein. Now they put in the first of all, they sometimes have many different plant protein sources, and so there's naturally a better mix of the amino acids. And then they still had the right amino acids to make it complete protein. And the other thing that's common with a really good vegan protein is they'll put in digestive enzymes. They'll put in those digestive supports, which you need with those proteins because they're harder to digest.
Okay. So just to kind of give the polar opposite to include the other half of the audience of they got the carnivores, but also now we got the
The
vegans.
vegans, yeah.
Yeah. So what would you say the benefit of just a vegan diet, or like have you just tried doing vegan for a certain amount of time during your experimentation?
I did 9 months as a vegetarian, and I felt terrible. I one of the things I was following at the time the Diet for a Small Planet, which was popular way back in the day, and so I was doing whole foods. I was doing sort of natural everything, and I was
Avocados.
cooking, and and I after about 9 months, first of all, my health definitely deteriorated in many ways, but the most dramatic story was I started to gain water weight. First of all, throughout my life, that's never been a problem for me. Even during my 3 pregnancies, I never gained water weight. So here I am. I'm gaining this incredible water weight. I'm like, my ankles look puffy. My face looks
Yeah.
puffy. I look terrible after 9 months. And so finally I decided, let me stop this. And so I had this glorious meal. So I went from like no animal products except for I was a vegetarian, not a vegan, and I had a meal that had fish and chicken and beef, had the whole thing.
Okay.
And that night I went to sleep. That's dinner. That night I woke up over and over and over and again
Stomach
to
aches?
go pee.
Yeah.
No, to go pee.
Oh, okay.
And the next morning I was completely without any edema, without any water weight at
Oh,
all.
wow.
My everything was like clear and clean. My face was chiseled. It was dramatic.
Yeah.
And so the probable cause for that is that I probably wasn't getting, even though I was really careful and really doing like the most sophisticated version of a vegetarian diet at that time. That was some time ago. I wasn't getting enough protein, and protein helps with water regulation in our cells. Allows enough water to come in and out of the cells for optimal hydration. And I just wasn't getting that, so my cells just became bloated, and I just became bloated, and so I never did that again. To be honest, I stopped taking vegetarians and vegans as clients a couple of years ago because they just weren't getting better. They just weren't getting better. You actually need some amount of animal foods. I think just to be a vegan or a vegetarian, and you either have to do it for religious reasons, because it's not a healthy thing. We evolved. We evolved. We were never vegetarian or vegan through the whole history of our bodily evolution. So even when we had tails that were 3 feet long and our bellies were this big because we were mostly vegetarian, we still opportunistically ate animal products. We never were vegetarians and vegans ever in our entire history.
We were omnivores for the most part.
Yeah. And so our bodies were built in a way that evolved with that. So to take that away is to take away a central part of what our body needs. And I just got to the point where, people were saying, well, I just want the workaround. And I'm like, there is no workaround. You need to eat some animal products. So I think that some people can get away with very few animal products, but probably the people who are type A blood, actually. But it still involves some, even if it's like once a week, some.
So,
Some.
So you think the omnivore obviously is the most balanced?
Probably, yeah.
But how are gorillas so big? How are pandas so big? How are certain dinosaurs so big if they were just eating vegetables?
We're different creatures. I don't have an answer to that.
Because it's like their DNAs are somewhat similar. Like we consist, we have there's a crossover,
Well, gorillas have big, so they still, one of the reasons why we no longer have bellies this big and we have bigger brains is because we started to, first of all, we're not just eating meat, but eating cooked meat. So now all of our energy doesn't have to go to our digestion. So when we were more vegetarian, but it wasn't completely, we had to have these enormous bellies in order to process all that food. But the problem is that was energetically expensive and at the expense of our brains. And so when we finally learned how to cook our food, we cook our meats, we were able to have some of the digestion process happen outside of our bodies. And so now we could get that nutrients really fast and easily. So now we had an excess of energy that allowed our brain to develop. This is actually a mainstream thing. It's not something like, the kooky Amanda nutritionist types. You can go to the Museum of Natural History in downtown in Washington, D.C., one of the Smithsonian museums, and the History of Man talks about that very thing. It shows when we were, even they don't say vegetarian, when we had had a diet more of plants, we had to have these huge bellies. And we also we had small brains and less developed brains. It was only when we started to cook our meats that we were able to have less expenditure here, and our bellies were able to get smaller, and our brains were able to grow.
So you just said meats, though, but wouldn't that also include things like spinach and kale? Like cooking that, you would get more bioavailability from that?
Well, yeah, you do. With a lot of plants, you get more bioavailability. Like with carrots, you get more beta carotene when you cook it, but you get less vitamin C. So there's just a trade-off. But yeah, a lot of nutrients are enhanced. There is there's often a drive to have our diet to be more austere, and somehow that's more moral or something. And so there's the vegetarians, and there's vegans, and there's raw vegans, and that's just going in the wrong direction. I think it's not surprising that a very deep tradition of healing, which is traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, they do a lot of cooked plants, the kind of soups
seaweed.
and
Do they cook seaweed?
Chinese, I'm not sure. But they have their soups, their vegetables in the soups, the greens in the soups, and those are, and they talk about having cooked foods as a primary that's easy on your digestion.
And
And that traditional Chinese medicine has been around for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Thousands of years.
Would you say it's kind of better than the Western medicine?
Oh, they all have their values. If you get hit by a car, you want to be in an American ER with all of their, emergency things. But if you are talking about a chronic disease that's going on for a long time, you want something that is compatible with your cells long term, from a chronic disease to a chronic wellness. And so, yeah, traditional Chinese medicine works really well for that. But as does the Whole30 and other just balanced ways of eating.
Do you think the preservatives in the Western foods are really going to affect even the DNA of the next offspring?
The epigen, the genetic play. Yeah, I do think there's there's been pretty good evidence that what your mother eats affects you, and even what your grandparents eat have affected you, and how they've lived and the stressors and all that affects you. So certainly the preservatives and the meat, you said preservatives, or the other chemicals.
Yeah, chemicals and stuff like that. Even the air you breathe. That's kind of where I was saying the comparison between the Western medicine and the Chinese. It's like, okay, maybe, or not the Chinese, but I guess just the Asian, medicine. The comparison of that, of them being more, the Asian side of being more conscious of the chemical aspect of things, and then over here, we're going free range. I mean, not even free range, but chemical, everything, So.
Well, there's some interesting studies when people are analyzing how good or bad meat is. You get completely different results when you have meats that are preserved, like sausages and hot dogs and cold cuts and all these things with all these preservatives. Those are deadly. They are associated appropriately with, and not surprisingly, with colon cancer and a whole slew of other cancers. Exactly the opposite, which is 100% grass-fed meats of different kinds. The exact opposite. It's protective against colon cancer. They're protective. So you want to keep those nitrates, and there's a whole slew of preservatives, and and some that are listed, some that aren't listed. I myself I still have my childhood home in Pennsylvania that I'm renting out. And so I have reasons to go up to Pennsylvania with some regularity. And I just go to the farms there and get my meats from the farmer. I see the cows so it's not like I have to believe them. I see the cows on pasture. I see them every season on pasture. I see them with their calves. Their calves aren't ripped away from them and somehow raised some other way. It's a very humane way of raising animals. And in a humane way of raising animals, you get a much better quality meat, a meat that has more life, a meat that has more to give.
So the quality of meat is determined. So what is the preservative really doing to deteriorate the quality of the meat, where we're not actually absorbing it?
Oh, I don't think it really affects the quality of the meat. It's just that the add-on toxin. Because in some ways it does preserve the meat. In some ways it makes it less likely to become rancid and things like that. But it does have, it is an add-on toxin.
I see. So find your, source your meat. Be the one that actually puts, be conscious of where your meat is coming from, pretty much. Let's see. So you kind of talked a little bit about the carcinogenic side of things. You were somewhat, I don't know if I'm taking it out of context, but the parsley side of healing some certain cancers?
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
So interestingly, if you go to PubMed, which is PubMed.gov, it's a way of looking at a lot of the research, a huge amount of the research, medical research. And if you look up parsley, you'll see almost nothing. Parsley and cancer, you'll see almost nothing. But if you look up apigenin in cancer, you'll see an enormous number of research articles about that, and confirming the validity and the power and the healing aspect of apigenin and cancer, apigenin for cancer. Well, what is the number one food that apigenin is in? And the answer is parsley. And I've seen in real life with real people adding not just a small amount but large amounts. And I've had clients use like 1, 2, and even 3 heads of parsley a day at times. You have to be pretty creative in the kitchen to be able to do that. But that's one of the things that I share as a nutritionist, how to do that when you're at some dire places with cancer or some other things. Interestingly, as I transitioned from these, chronic things like cancer and diabetes and things, and I want to transition into, fitness, weight loss, and athletic performance, apigenin also turns out to be one of the most valuable things for weight loss. And I mean fat loss. On the one hand, you don't want to lose like real viable tissue when you have cancer, but you actually do want to lose fat. You want to lose the extra sort of like toxic add-on to your body. And so the same recipes I made for people who had cancer are the same recipes I'm making are just with different words attached to people who are trying to lose weight, fat, fat loss, body recomposition. So it's central.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the fat burners then?
Ozempic?
Yeah, like Ozempic. Someone said that. Actually, it's funny. A friend of mine, he's like, dude, you're looking more lean. You look like you're on Ozempic. And I'm like, what? What is that? And I looked it up, and I saw like there's an Ozempic face and everything like that.
Oh. Yeah.
And then so I was joking to him. I was like, dude, it looks like your legs are on Ozempic.
Yeah.
Because he was doing some legs, and I was kind of just teasing him, but. Yeah, that's the first time I heard of Ozempic, and it was just like a week ago. But apparently Ozempic, so now we're talking about Ozempic.
Well, I think it's going to lose favor when a lot of people start dying from it. That's what I think.
Wow.
I feel pretty strongly that it is counter to anything healthy. So you lose, like obviously when people are really morbidly obese, they'll be losing more fat than muscle. But when you start getting into places where people are only like 50 pounds over or not even 50 pounds over, they often lose like muscle, a lot of muscle. And especially when they're like only 20 pounds over, muscle, they lose almost more muscle than they lose fat. And muscle is the organ of longevity. Muscle predicts our longevity more than any other organ, which surprised me. But more than your liver health or your heart health or your, any other organ. Now there are other metrics that determine that predict your longevity more, more with more certainty, like
body fat,
like maximum oxygen uptake. Well, VO2 max will predict your lifespan even more than muscle mass. But muscle mass is the organ of longevity. So if you start losing that muscle mass and you start slowing down your digestion, you start messing up this whole GI. GI is where we have more neurotransmitter molecules in our GI than we have in our brains. To mess around with your GI is to mess around with one of the most central communication centers of our person. And I think that we're gonna have a lot of deaths. That I predict I predict so many deaths that they're going to have to recalibrate.
Yeah, take it out of the system.
So I would not work with somebody who takes that. I wouldn't want to try to figure out all the side effects are going to come.
Yeah. What about like fat burners? Like you hear, just take the shot. It'll help you burn fat, or take this pill, or this is a detox pill, and then you're gonna. And I imagine those have certain chemicals that are destroying bacteria that are very useful.
Well, to be honest, I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about, but I do have some favorite things that I do recommend when people are trying to lose fat. First of all, like normal detoxification protocols are really, really good for fat loss because we store toxins in our fat. And so sometimes our body is trying to help us by not releasing fat. Because if you release the fat, if you get rid of the fat, then the toxins that are in that fat that are released are now in your bloodstream. And so sometimes the easiest way to help people to lose weight is to not think about calories or all that metabolic stuff, but to actually think about detoxification first. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. Milk thistle is the most common one, but there's a lot of more
You said
sophisticated.
milk. The what?
Milk thistle is an herb
Okay.
that helps to detoxify your liver. But there are many, many different ways to detoxify. And I would recommend that first for many people.
It's mostly from the liver?
No, it's everywhere that, there's toxic elements throughout your body. So I really like a product called Amino Detox because that helps to get phase 2 liver detoxification first, meaning you're clearing the superhighway for finishing the detoxification when you go to phase 1. But there are so many different ways for detox. But some of the other ones, like L-carnitine, are you familiar with that?
No.
So L-carnitine is a couple of amino acids together that help your body to better take the fats in your diet when they're in your body and in your cells, and helps to transport them into the mitochondria. And so once fats are transported into the mitochondria, they're able to be used for energy and converted into energy. And so that is one of the best, you can call it a fat burner, but because it is. So carnitine is, one a day in the morning, and it helps your body to simply take a little bit more fat and chug it into energy, turn fat into energy as opposed to fat and just laying there in storage. And there's another one called CLA, conjugated linolenic acid, which is back in the day, 60s, 70s, 80s, no one thought of hamburgers as something that was fatty or not fat, that caused weight gain, that caused you to be fat. Oh, like all these burgers will make you fat. No one thought of that because back in those earlier times, more of the meat that was available was grass-fed. Just naturally, that's how they were. That's how the farming was. And so grass-fed meat will have CLA in it from the cows eating grass. And CLA is a kind of fatty acid that helps your body to keep the metabolism high and to keep you burning fat. And now you can take it as a supplement. And it will say sometimes, revs up metabolic health, and it says something about burning fat. And it does. I've seen it myself. I've seen it in clients. And I do often recommend it. And there's no downside. Interestingly, CLA is also used as an for cancer. Obviously, it doesn't have it's not a huge lever to pull for cancer, but it's one of many things that you can take when you've got that. So there's really no downside to it.
So when you're losing fat, is your body, like as a man, or I guess just in bodies in general, do they respond by producing more testosterone, and is there a correlation there? That's going to help you with muscle growth, and then it's going to help with fat burning, getting into that fat burning state, and it's like having your body process food more efficiently.
I'm trying to connect those things, testosterone and all those things, and I don't know if there's a direct connection, but there are a couple of indirect connections. One indirect connection is actually a lowering of testosterone when your calories go too low. When your food and calories go too low, all of those processes will, drop as well. And so it's probably best to not drop your calories too low. It's not like, you're going to lose more and more weight the lower you drop your calories, because your metabolism will slow down and your testosterone will slow down. But then there is the aspect, like if you go to bed without basically on an empty stomach, not with food, you'll tend to produce more growth factor. So more, yeah. So if you go to bed with a donut in your belly, you're not going to be producing growth factor.
Okay.
And it was one of those really expensive, sophisticated things that some of the movie stars would take and pay a lot of money for, but we can do it ourselves by just not being a pig at night.
Yeah. But what about protein, though? I thought eating protein right before going to sleep.
Yeah, that. So the difference is, I just gave the example of the donut. The difference is, first of all, quantity. When people take that protein shake before bed, it's usually like 100 calories. It's not some huge amount. That's not a large amount of calories.
Right.
Or when they take their cottage cheese, because like casein. Casein is a slow digesting and a slow releasing protein, and so you have access to amino acids throughout the night for at least a long time of the night with that, as opposed to other protein sources. Again, they're not. If you ate like if you had 500 calories of cottage cheese, that would be a problem, and you'd probably hit, drop your growth factor. But if you just have that little, that little portion, or that small protein shake that doesn't have a lot of other things in it, it's just, then, and they talk about casein before you go to bed as opposed to whey protein, because whey protein's fast. After a workout, you get that whey protein in, whew, your muscles go, thank you.
Yeah.
But for before you go to bed, the whey protein, the casein protein is very, very long acting, and it stays in your body, and it keeps on being absorbed in your body, and gives you access to amino acids for hours while you sleep.
And casein is a separate supplement.
Casein is you can have a protein powder which is mostly whey or mostly casein. And then as far as dairy foods, because she just has a lot of casein in it, as opposed to yogurt will have more whey in it.
So I'm lactose intolerant, so for me, anytime I hear anything about like cottage cheese, even Oreos, I found out I have the cream from that just like affects my stomach. But is there any sort of correlation between taking a lactose pill? Is that going to disturb the casein in any way, where if you were to take that, it wouldn't process the same way, or is it just taking the lactate out?
There are two completely different things. The lactose has to do with the sugar, the milk sugar, and casein is the milk protein. Now, that being said, I don't practice that myself because I'm a little bit allergic and sensitive to dairy as well. And usually what you're sensitive to is not the whey, but is the casein. So I don't do that little bit of casein protein before I go to bed, because it gives me a problem.
I see. Yeah. So how do you?
So some people do that. So sometimes I have a little bit of protein before I go to bed, but sometimes I don't. And when I do, it's like a normal piece. It's like a piece of, it's a piece of fish or something.
Yeah.
It's just protein. It's just something from dinner or something.
So I also wanted to ask about liquid diets and how beneficial or harmful they could be. Because I remember when I was hit by a car when I was 20, and I was on a liquid diet for 3 weeks or something like that, or a bit of time. Within that amount of time, I lost like 20 pounds. I was from 175 and I went to 149.
Oh my!
And there's a clear difference, and it was just in 3 weeks that I lost that, and it's just because of the liquid diet. And I wouldn't say that I felt great, like I just couldn't eat as, it was harder for me to eat. I was just very irritable, and it's just like that was the way for them that they suggested for me to recover with a liquid diet. But
when you say liquid diet, what was in that liquid? What was that?
That's a good question. I'm gonna guess chicken broth, maybe. There was.
So it's a savory, soupy thing.
Yeah, it was very soupy stuff.
Like a soup, yeah.
I can't remember the exact what it was. I just remember it was liquid diet for like a while. It was probably it was one of the hardest times I had to go through. But it was a liquid diet though. So what is the drawbacks or benefits to a liquid diet?
First of all, you can have great liquid diets and you can have terrible liquid diets.
Yeah.
That can span from some of the. I thought you were going to say something like the Boost and those kind of already made smoothie things that you can buy. Those are about the worst you can possibly have, because they have the worst proteins. It's usually a soy protein. They have the worst fats. It's usually some like canola oil or some of the problematic seed oils, and the carbohydrates are usually sometimes they're actually high fructose corn syrup, but if not, they're often sugar or something that has a better name but is basically sugar, as opposed to if you were to just do a smoothie. Think about it. The protein could be the best of the protein powders, the one that you do the best on, the best of, maybe a whey protein powder. The fats could be medium chain triglycerides. It could be flaxseed oil. It could be medicinal oils, like complete medicine. And then the carbohydrates, think about, it's in a blender. You can put fruits and vegetables of all kinds. You can put parsley. But like any food to make it taste good, like, apples and grapes and like all sorts of things that are tasty instead of sugar. There's no cofactors. There's no food value. I mean, you throw an apple and you've got an apple. And it can make it like lovely and sweet. But those boost kinds of things are just about as bad as they get. Okay. And I want to go back a little bit to the question about a vegan diet. I think a vegan diet can be very useful for short times for detoxification. Like sometimes you want to give your body a rest, and you want it to be mostly water and fiber, and you just want to give it a rest. Just like people they fast as well. It's not, I don't think a vegan diet's a long-term solution. I don't think fasting is a long-term solution. Obviously, you can't fast forever, but it certainly has its place, and I think that's the place. And then going to a liquid diet. Sometimes people do something that kind of has a detoxifying aspect that's similar to vegan, or detoxifying aspect similar to fasting with some liquid form. Especially when you said broth, that's a common one. When people say they're fasting, sometimes they mean fasting and just bone broth, fasting and just lemon. I did a 6-day fast. And what I mean by that is I had a total of 3 lemons. So each day I had a half a lemon in water, and that was, so basically it was very close to 0, but I just wanted to make sure that I had my electrolytes in check. And I went for a whole food as opposed to electrolyte, thing that has, chemicals and stevia and things like that. So
stevia is not good. Right?
No, I think the stevia is fine, but if I was fasting for a reason, and so I wanted to really detoxify, so that half a lemon satisfied the electrolytes without having to have a commercial product that had more processed ingredients. Half a lemon is half a lemon.
Right. Okay. And so with that fasting process, you're letting the zombie cells die.
Yep.
And you're
autophagy.
You're not re-engaging them with sugar and then having them spread.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what our body needs to get rid of those harmful cells. So that's a huge benefit of the liquid diet, and not just avoiding sugars from your diet in general.
Well, avoiding sugars from diet in general is good. I think that, first of all, I'm not sure if fasting is good for everyone. In fact, I don't think I would do it from here going forward. I think that when you get older, it's too hard on your body. Although I only did that like 7 years ago. It's not like I was super young 7 years ago. I wasn't, but I just felt like I wanted to do it. And I learned a lot, and it was good.
How did you feel? Did you feel more energetic? Because I hear that after like 3 days, you're actually feeling better.
Yeah, you do. You feel more alert, because you're producing ketones. Your brain really likes ketones to work with. So yeah, I felt fine.
But then was there a point at day 6 where you're like, I'm not making it to the end of this week?
Well, yeah, because I didn't have any endpoint when I started. I just thought I'm going to go day by day by day. But when I started to get into like 4 or 5, I thought, well, I'll just do a week. And I had in my mind, I'm going to do a week. I'm doing a week. And at day 6, I'm like, it's day 6 in 1 hour. Can I say a week? I'm like, no, I can't. My mind started playing tricks on me. Like, it's day 6 in 2 hours. Like, no, it's time to just stop.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's time to just stop. And just say 6 days, that's fine.
And did you feel like so you had kind of anxiety starting to like happen?
I started to feel bad. I started to feel a problem with energy and focus. Sort of the opposite.
You weren't working out.
No, I wasn't.
That's probably another thing too. Would you recommend working out while fasting?
Minimally, like probably more yoga than actual weightlifting.
And it would just be energy consumption. Is that the reason, or is it there's some sort of correlation to movement?
And stress.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because you're putting your body in that stress, so
Yeah.
then it's gonna have a side effect.
Well, okay, let's go there. Your body uses different fuels depending on the intensity of the activity. So with really, really low intense activities like sleeping, you use fats for fuel. And then when really, really high intensity things like weightlifting, you're using carbohydrates as fuel. So if you're not getting anything, that means your body's basically using your body fat as fuel. And so if you were to just force your body to do a weightlifting workout, your body doesn't have the capacity to supply fuel that fast from fat. And it doesn't have any carbohydrates. So what will happen is your if you just will it, I'm going to lift heavy today, or just lift something like in that mode, your body will have a stress response, and your adrenaline will be produced, and the adrenaline will signal the liver to release glucose, and then the glucose will be used to lift the weights. But that whole stress response is first of all, it's stopping you from using the fat as fuel, which is part of the reason why people fast, is to use fat as fuel and to teach your body to use fat as fuel. Even if they're not really overweight or want to lose a lot of weight, they still want to come back to a place where their body uses fat as fuel efficiently so they can be metabolically flexible. When they have fats, when they don't have fats, when they have carbohydrates, when they don't have carbohydrates. So the idea of definitely getting into a stress response to try to get that glucose, and then you get it from the liver, it's just not a good idea. You want to do just calm yoga with calm breathing, or certainly things that move your lymph around, because that's actually more the opposite of a stress response.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of transition a little bit. Actually, let me just check to see how we're doing with the camera.
Okay.
So that way, yes, we're still going good.
Okay.
Oh, this one's almost overheating, though.
Overheating?
Yeah, and then this one, yes, it's still going. Hour 15, wow. And then here, just double check how we're recording. It looks like we're recording great. Yes, everything is going smoothly. And sometimes there's this one thing out of that chain that just doesn't work. But right now we're going great. Yeah, but how are you doing? Yeah, but how are you doing with things right now?
At the beginning, I didn't realize that we were starting, and then I realized we must be starting, and so I just went with it.
Yeah. I think even talking about I want to bring this so that way you're not straining to lean forward, because I see that you like to just be right there in that comfort zone. There. Is that better for you?
Yeah.
Is that a little too close?
No, it's fine.
Because the closer it is, a lot better it will be. Wherever you're more comfortable.
Yeah, that's fine.
So there, or like in between. Yeah. So I mean, let's see. What else do you want to kind of touch on? Because I there's so much that we could touch on, because you're just a plethora of knowledge, and I'm a very curious person, and I'm sure we've only touched the surface on those specific things that we're even talking about. Just kind of go over avoid almonds,
Spinach,
parsley, arugula is great. Go to the farms, get to know your animals.
Yeah, get to know your farmers.
Let's see. Oh, but what about, for the older folks? So as you're getting older, your diet should probably change, right? Or how's that? The transition of getting older to what you're eating.
One thing that is often. Let me recoup. The older you get, the more protein you should have, not less. Now, it's so common for older people to say, "Oh, I need to eat less of this and the heavy thing of meats, or a heavy thing of what they think of as like animal proteins. But animal proteins are something that you need more as you age, not less. And so when people are eating these nutritionally devoid, like what their pastas and their breads and all that, which are lovely foods, but they can't be the centerpiece if you want to age well. So
why is that? Because
they just don't have all the nutrients that like a red meat. Red meat has so much for your body, for your brain, for your hormones. It's not protein and fat alone. The number of nutrients like choline, that's like central for brain function. And people are concerned about brains as they age.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of brains and aging, some people say that creatine, we think about creatine as something that young bodybuilder guys have for their muscles.
We're going to start that sentence again.
Yeah,
I just want you to, it looked like it was leaning a little bit.
Okay.
There you go. I think that's good.
Should I?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Creatine is key for older people, for men and women, and is key for their for their brain health. We often think of creatine as something that young men take for their muscles and for people who are working out at the gym, but actually it's probably more fundamental for the older people. They need it more. They get less in their food, and it's a brain nutrient.
But I do hydrochloride, I think it's called, or hydroglyceride. It's not the mono type, because I do think that still does water retention.
Okay.
At least in my opinion, but and the bro science that you learn in the gym, like you've heard things, and the hydro I heard is better, more water soluble, able to absorb into your body without making you bloated. What do you think about that?
I'm not sure. I do know that when I tried something besides creatine monohydrate, it tasted terrible. I don't remember what it was. Maybe it was that. Maybe it was something else. So
HCI, I think, or ACL, I think.
So tell me, what does that taste like?
This is battery acid.
It tastes bad?
Battery acid.
Okay, that's bad.
It tastes like lemon. It's just a very acidic tasting, but that's just the flavor that I've got. It's called rocket something, maybe even called rocket fuel. But it's the brand, it's biotech. It's a certain type of creatine that I take it almost every day. But I've taken HCl, I think is what it's called, and that's like a very pure form of it. And apparently there's other forms that are just very soluble and they don't clump up, and a good way to tell is just by filling a cup of water, putting the creatine, and just seeing how fast it will disappear or dissolve there. But that's the one I take, is the hydrochloride or hydroglyceride. Is it glyceride or chloride?
So I don't remember. I do take the more typical one. I take the creatine monohydrate, and part of it is that I haven't really seen the bro science that suggests that something else is better. And also, when I have tasted it, another form, I don't remember what it was so bad. In contrast, creatine monohydrate tastes like nothing. It tastes maybe a tiny, tiny bit bitter, but mostly it tastes like nothing. And so it can be hidden in everything. So that's what I take. And I haven't had any problems with bloating. And that's even with certainly the normal 5 grams that are recommended. But even when I have not taken it for a while and I've said, well, gosh, now would be a time to see what happens if I did a loading dose. And so you saturate your muscles faster by doing a higher dose for a really short period of time for just a few days. So even when I did a loading dose of about 20 grams a day, which is 4 times as much, and I'm not a big person, I did not have any bloating even then. So I feel like I don't have a bloating problem with it.
So it's something else that causes the bloating, but that's typically, I think, just the information that kind of passes around is that you get bloated from monohydrate.
Well, it's not blood more that you water retention.
Yeah, retain
Yeah,
water.
yeah. So some people have and some people don't. I definitely don't myself,
Mm.
and it's so easy to take, and it's so inexpensive. But even if I weren't working out and having that as one of the things on my mind, as an older person, it's just good for your brain. It's
Mm.
good for your brain. So I'm taking it from my brain, if nothing else.
So that's interesting because I've looked at it more as a tool. Instead of tapping into sugars, I'm able to have longer lasting workouts
Yeah,
without
yeah.
being feeling depleted because I'm just giving myself. I actually only take like 2.5 milligrams or 2.5 grams.
Yeah.
And I'm just starting to take 2 scoops, which still might be even less than 5 grams.
Well, that form might allow you to take less and get the same effect. I don't know what the dosing on that is.
Can you overdose on creatine?
You could overdose on water.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sure you can. And I don't know if people would why they'd be motivated to do that because eventually I think anyone, even I, would probably get some kind of water retention.
Yeah. Because I feel like I just limit my amount of creatine because of that. Maybe just I'm always just skeptical of overdoing it, so I always just kind of dabble a little bit, and if it works, it works. That's great. So, how much creatine should someone take, or can someone take that is a good amount without it being quote overdosed?
Well, the most common there's some supplements that can really vary as far as recommendations go from one person to the next. But this one seems people are very much in agreement. It's 5 grams. 5 grams for most people, most of the time, even regardless of size sometimes. Sometimes the big guys might do more. Yeah, so I'm seeing that as the standard. And then the multiple times, like the 20 that I was just talking about, is really only for a couple of days or several days to get your muscle stores up faster. But that's not long term. No one's taking 20 grams long term.
Yeah. So I hear that you need to kind of load it in a sense. Like if you don't take it, it's not really going to be that effective the first time you take it. Like
Right.
you have to kind of do it in phases. Like I
Right.
have to take it 8 times, like 8 separate days of taking 5 grams.
It takes a while to get into your body, to get into your system. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's cool. So I didn't realize that it really helped with their brain.
Yeah, people
as well.
use it in like hospitals settings with older people, with older patients.
So what about coffee? Because I hear that also is really good for your brain.
That first of all, coffee should not be taken with creatine at the same time because they have a lot of shared receptors. So one strategy is coffee before the workout and creatine after the workout.
Interesting.
Coffee being more time,
Release.
relevant to the workout. To take it ahead will give you that focus and boost, as opposed to the creatine. Like you said, it's how you build up over the course of multiple days, and so taking after workout or taking any old time during the day is equally as good. So you don't take it together.
What would happen if you did?
No, they just would not be as fully. Each one of them would sort of block some aspect of the other, so it just wouldn't be as effective. So you're just kind of wasting your, some effort. Coffee seems to be very different relative to the individual. That seems to be extraordinarily different relative to maybe the person's genetics or whatever would be causing it. Some research shows that having some coffee is good for longevity. That's good for stopping a lot of the disease processes, especially in your brain. And other studies show the exact opposite. So I think that I tend to suggest if it feels good to you, do it. And if it doesn't feel good to you, don't do it. Like when I do 1 cup of coffee, I feel pretty good. When I do 3 cups of coffee, I feel like a jittery, crazy person.
Yeah.
And so obviously 3 cups is not good for me. I can feel it. I don't need someone to tell me.
Yeah. Yeah, my dad just stopped drinking coffee, and I've known him, throughout my life, always having his black cup of coffee. And I think it's great. I think that the transition away from coffee, at least in my opinion, is better. Is there a correlation between the amount of energy that you will have, and if you let's say you stimulate your tank of energy with stuff like pre-workout, and that has like all sorts of crazy chemicals and like caffeine, that you're reducing the amount of energy output that you're going to be able to have over a long period of time?
I see what you're saying. I don't think there's a correlation other than if it interferes with your sleep and your recovery. If you're just jacked up and you can't sleep and you get 7 hours instead of 8 or 5 hours instead of 6, or just some diminished amount of sleep relative to your personal needs, then obviously if you don't recover, then you will have a decline over time. But I don't think there's a direct correlation, but there's probably several indirect correlations like that.
Yeah, I used to take a lot of like energy drinks, especially for my martial art tests that I would have to take, because we would do long-based endurance exercise, holding a horse stance for like 18 minutes, that type of thing. And I would jack myself up, and I was already on Adderall because of my ADHD, and I would be taking my energy drinks, and that would jack me up to the point where I would be shaky, and my grandmaster would call me nutcase because I just had I could not even speak properly because it would just be so anxious and jittery.
Well, I was really referring to one cup of coffee, not the equivalent of many, 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 like you just said. So many, 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 you are drawing on your adrenaline reserve. You're becoming adrenaline
deficient or
depleted.
Tolerant.
No, your adrenals will just be deficient. Will be exhausted. Adrenal exhaustion. You're just like in that fight or flight all the time, and then you just become adrenally exhausted.
And that will happen. Would that happen over time, or you just become your response to needing to?
It happens over time. Your adrenals literally have fewer nutrients in it to be able to make adrenaline, to be able to get you up for your next event, your next athletic thing.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking as well. That's what was gonna what was happening. I've kind of suggested most of my friends that they should stop taking pre-workout, or even take a replacement like beetroot, and jack yourself up with ginger. So that your circulation is being amped up by that.
That's what blenders are for.
Blenders,
like the real beets and real ginger. Not just powdered stuff. You just put in the blender.
Yeah, and then the turmeric. I noticed. So there's a very special property with turmeric that I've learned that it's in so many common foods, especially even with Asian foods and then just like foods you're seeing in just daily consumption, that I didn't realize the benefit of turmeric is like you're literally increasing the bioavailability of how you're just absorbing all like food in general, right? Is there something to that?
Well, I think it's sort of the reverse. Like you get better absorption of your turmeric when you have it in something hot, which is a hot food. You get better absorption when there's pepper involved, and you have better absorption when there's fat. So you have better absorption with turmeric when it's in something that's hot with fat and with pepper. But that actually is it's very common in Indian food, but Indian food will have those elements in it. It'll be warm with pepper, with fat. So that will help you absorb your turmeric better.
I would just say, hey, so unfortunately the video got cut off there, and we do have a very short time, unfortunately, and I know we can talk a lot about other things, especially your vast knowledge of nutrition. Where can people find more information about where they can find you, or what you have to offer?
So right now I'm doing very little with clients. I'm doing very little client work because of two reasons. One is that I'm now making a decent living as I've transitioned my empty nest home into an Airbnb
Oh,
space. And so
nice.
I have Airbnb guests in both the house that I have them living in right now in Maryland, as well as the one that I grew up in Pennsylvania.
Very nice.
And so I'm very selective on my clients. They're clients that I are ready to dive in big time. And I'm spending a lot of time also doing the protocol for my future son-in-law for FSHD. And I actually want to talk about that relative to somebody who would want to find me.
Okay.
When I went in the deep dive about what was significant and potentially helpful and healing for FSHD, I literally got into the hundreds of supplements, hundreds,
Wow.
like 200, 250, like a lot. And obviously, that's not something that's doable. That's not something that would be therapeutic because it would be sort of like confusing to the body. So I had to sit on what to do with that information. If you have 250 things that might be good, but you have no research to select. How do you do the selective process?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I was doing a deep dive in is how we can use our consciousness to help guide and receive information back, biofeedback from our bodies. We have foods definitely affect our genes, supplement affects our genes, our emotions affect our genes, and our thoughts
Environment.
affect our genes. So why not just start the communication? Why not start the friendship between all these things and our genes? So I'm working on something called Friending the Blueprint, where I have, I'm working on the early expressions of coming into communication with whether it's a faulty gene like an FSHD or just receiving supplements into your body, receiving food into your body, and then basically asking for the therapeutic aspect to it, and also asking for a response in return. And so there can be some information coming from the individual. So there can be a customization that is very organic to what they're experiencing individually. So I say that as a segue to say the people who I want to work with next are people I want who are willing to dive in 100%. I spent most of my time since 2008 when I started working with clients and saying, I take everyone and I meet you where you are. I actually want to have clients that want to dive in with 2 feet, dive in the whole way. And that's one of the reasons why I'm moving from chronic diseases to athletic performance. Because when, to my shock, even when people get cancer, they'll often say, well, I can't make the adjustment. I've been living with this lifestyle all my life, and they really can. They emotionally can't do it. But when you work with an athlete, they go, yeah, I'll do it. And then what else?
Yeah.
Give me more. Give me more. I'm willing. I'm able. I'm going to change. I'm willing to just experiment and go deep. And that's the kind of client I want to work with. So whether I'm not looking for only people with FSHD, or I'm not looking for only athletes, but I'm looking for people who are willing to say, look, I am taking this very seriously and I'm not going to shy away from new things. I'm not going to shy away from, because I don't need to have a lot of clients at this point.
Right.
And so I want those that are excited and exciting and are willing to do, some of the hard work. Lifestyle supplements, foods, internal processing.
Yeah, they have discipline.
Yeah.
So where could people find you though?
Yeah. So I can give my contact information. My website, which is lfcnutrition.com. LFC stands for Learn, Feel, Choose. Nutrition is what I do.com. Now that has been down. It's being worked on right now.
Okay.
I call myself Learn, Feel, Choose because that's how I realize that's how I work with everyone. There's a learning process and a sort of a deep learning process. It's really a very big part of the first appointment even. And then there's a feeling sense of like, I'm not just, like everyone else. Like is possible, what feels good, and then choose. I'm not sitting there with hands on hips saying you must.
Yeah.
Like a commander, you are making the choice. You are in charge. You are the captain of your ship. And that really is a healing thing also. And nutrition is the obvious subject of everything that I do. And then I could give you my phone number, my email address.
Yeah, give them your email.
Yeah, so my email is my last name, Buxbaum, Buxbaum, 5 spelled out, FIVE, @gmail.com.
Okay.
And yes, you can contact me if you're interested in working together.
Cool.
I work with everything from, I thought it was everything from chronic diseases all the way to athletic performance, as far as like, more expanded capacities. But now I'm now working with genetic diseases as well as chronic diseases, as well as basic wellness and, aging well and weight loss and things like that, and athletic performance. So at all levels of human challenges, as well as in human development, is where I'm at with.
Awesome.
And my clients. If you want to work with me, come. It's gonna be big.
Well, it has been an awesome pleasure to have you and literally bless us with all your information and knowledge, and hopefully we can even deep dive into a follow up after this.
I would love to.
That'd be great. Just to see how the development of your research is going, and there's so much that we've only touched the surface on. So it's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to tell a story about just how much I enjoyed it.
Oh, okay, sure. Let's hear it.
I started reading about nutrition when I was 12. 12, because I got very sick. So there was a story behind that. And I started telling people as a 12-year-old what they should be doing and what they should be eating. Yeah. My dad said, do not do that. Do not proselytize as though you, a 12-year-old, know the answers. And you know how fun it is right now to proselytize as though I know some answers. This is like the ultimate. This job is the ultimate job that I've wanted all my life.
Yeah, that's
and I'm having so much fun.
That's perfect. That's exactly what this platform is for. It's for you to just tell everyone what to do and what not to do. But that's the thing, is everyone's going to have an opinion too, and some things are going to work for them, and there might be even some like comments and stuff that we can definitely go over. Like I've had a lot of comments on other videos and people pushing back, and it's kind of nice to have a conversation about it. Yeah. So if there are things that obviously, if you guys know information about that you want to correct her, or also add on to, this is a platform for that, and I'd love to have this conversation of just like wellness and just overall improvement of the human condition. So I think the platform is really meant for, is just putting a spotlight on people that are developing and going through their trials and tribulations, and we're all just supporting one another. So thank you guys for watching the Producer Pod, and catch you guys on the next one. Peace. Boom.